Yes.
Hi. Yeah, Anushka, today we will start with the introduction to multiculturalism. This is a very interesting topic, in fact.
Okay,
And
sir.
whatever you have, whatever doubts you have, just ask me. Okay, don't hesitate to ask me. Okay, and then we'll see whoever is adding up. We will ask them to raise their own questions and their concerns or anything like that. Prayant, how are you? Prayant, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. How are you? Good
Good,
afternoon.
good afternoon, sir. So I am fine.
Okay. Prayant and Anishka, we are starting with multiculturalism today. Okay. So, what is multiculturalism? Let us see the definition in broad sense. Multiculturalism is a societal approach that recognizes and respects the presence of diverse cultural groups within a community. Within a community, that is very important. It emphasizes the importance of appreciating cultural differences and encourages the coexistence of multiple cultural identities within a single society. So, this concept really promotes when you see the definition, how multiculturalism is being defined, if you go deep into the definition, you can understand one thing that the concept of multiculturalism promotes inclusivity, equality, and also mutual respect among different cultural groups. Okay. At the same time, they are allowing them to maintain their unique traditions, the unique traditions, and contribute to the collective social fabric. So that is basically multiculturalism. It sounds to be a bit uh, a bit uh, what to say, a bit complicated, but it's not that complicated. It's just that it promotes inclusivity, it promotes equality, it promotes mutual respect among different cultural groups, allowing them to maintain their unique traditional and contribute to the collective social fabrics. Also, in multiculturalism is can be in a broad spectrum are very have varying meanings. They have different meanings. They have been in different contexts. They have been different meanings. However, the definition which I have raised now is the collective one. Andrew Haywood, sorry, divides multiculturalism into two categories. According to Andrew, this multiculturalism can be divided into descriptive and normative. What is descriptive? Descriptive describes cultural diversity as a factual element, describes cultural diversity as a factual element in a society, and it focuses on the reality that multiple cultural groups coexist within a given society. It focuses on the reality that multiple cultural groups coexist in a given society. Okay. Then what is normative culturalism? It refers to the values ideologies, or policies that supports the existence and preservation of cultural diversity. It emphasizes how societies should approach and maintain the coexistence of diverse cultures. So that's the difference. Descriptive describes cultural diversity as a factual element, whereas multiculturalism refers to the values, ideologies, or policies that support the existence and preservation of cultural diversities. Now, the two forms, let us, as I told you, descriptive, this form refers to the existence of multiple cultures within a society. This is what I explained to you. And it observes how cultural groups live together, interact, and influence frameworks of integration or recognition. For example, I'll tell you, a city with a large number of immigrant populations, like you can say Gulf countries, in many of these Gulf countries have a large number of immigrant populations from different countries. What they would exhibit descriptive multiculturalism because their cultures coexist in same space. Different people coming from different countries living in one room have different cultures coexist in the same place. That is called descriptive multiculturalism. Whereas in normative culturalism, what happens? It suggests how society should recognize, maintain cultural differences, emphasize equal treatment, cultural rights, and social harmony. So that's the basic thing. It suggests how society should recognize and maintain cultural differences, emphasize equal treatment, cultural rights, and social harmony. For example, we can say that this normative multiculturalism goes beyond the mere fact of cultural diversity and advocates for actions to protect and promote the identities of minorities or immigrant groups, ensuring that their cultural expressions are not suppressed. For example, I tell you, there are people from Pakistan, there are people from India. In India, also different states, people from different states who are living in India. What they used to do, they have their own cultures. Yet, being in one room, they express their cultural diversities. Like some may go for someone from Kerala may go for Onam. They will all celebrate together in the room. Some may go for Diwali. They will all celebrate. Those kind of things are normative culturalism. What are the core principles? This is something which we have to understand. What is core principles of multiculturalism? Well, the first one is inclusivity. Inclusivity means creating an environment where every individual, irrespective of their cultural background, feel respected, valued, and included. Creating an environment where every individual, means every single individual in that environment, whichever environment it is, irrespective of their cultural background, feels respected, valued, and included. For example, I tell you, schools implementing multicultural curriculums to celebrate diverse traditions and histories. That is something which is happening in most of the schools now, like DPS and all. they have been using this one as schools implementing multicultural curriculums to celebrate diverse traditions and histories. The next one is equality, offering equal opportunity and rights to people from all cultural, social, and ethnic groups. For example, let us see workplaces, some companies, when they have policies that ensure fair hiring. When they are doing recruitment, they used to mention it is a fair hiring practice, equal fair pay for all employees, regardless of their ethnicity or gender, creed, or whatever it is. So that is something called equality. That is something we can express in equality. Cultural pluralism. Uh, it means that promoting and preserving cultural diversity as a strength rather than a challenge, which means, mm, to give you an example, like government supports for festivals and traditions and various communities, such as promoting regional languages alongside with national languages, those kind of things are called cultural pluralism. Before we go into the historical context, till now in these three slides, is there anything, Anushka, you want to ask? Hello? Anushka, you are there or you are gone? Okay, we'll go back to the historical context. Post-Civil War, it is civil, okay. I wrote it wrong, maybe. Post-Civil War and post-Harlem Renaissance, America. After the Civil War and during the Harlem Renaissance, America experienced substantial demographic and cultural shifts. The country faced a growing influx of immigrants who began reshaping its cultural and social landscapes. Okay, and then the Harlem Renaissance specifically was a cultural movement primarily among the African Americans that brought attention to vibrant contributions of Black culture in areas such as literature, music, and art. Actually, this Harlem Renaissance is spanning from 1920 and up to 1930s, and it was a groundbreaking cultural movement centered in Harlem. Harlem is a place in New York, and the movement also highlighted racial divisions that existed within American society and American blacks. That's the most important thing. So that is one of the historical context where multiculturalism has started. Number two is the immigration surge. Between 1865 and 1914, around 12 million immigrants arrived in the US, many coming from Southern and Eastern Europe, seeking better economic opportunities or escaping political turmoil. Actually, this marked the start of a significant, what we should say, significant demographic changes, particularly particularly with the arrival of Irish, Italian, Polish, and we can say even Jewish immigrants. These immigrants were often viewed as outsiders by the established Anglo-Saxon majorities in US, which set the stage for debate about integration and identity. So that is the second stage of multiculturalism coming into place. And then the melting pot metaphor. The melting pot metaphor describes a society where diverse cultures, ethnicities, and traditions blend together to form a unified, homogeneous identity. It suggests that individuals from different backgrounds come together, contribute their unique traits, which then melt into a single shared culture. The thing here is the melting metaphor suggested that the diverse groups entering the US would blend into a unified American identity. What will happen with that? It tends it tends uh, sorry, I lost it. Okay, fine. Uh, Backgrounds, and what had happened, it makes a homogeneous American culture. This idea of melting pot reinforced the notion that assimilation was the key to social and cultural integration. That's very important. Assimilation was the key to social and cultural integration. However, what happened was that melting pot idea ignored the complexities of cultural identity and downplayed the significance of heritage and tradition in shaping immigrant experience or experiences, whatever it is. Now we will go to evolving perspectives of multiculturalism. What is the evolving perspective of multiculturalism? One is shift in ideological views. Over time, the notion of the melting point was criticized for being overly simplistic and exclusionary, which means scholars and policymakers recognize the need for a more nuanced understanding of how different cultures could coexist and thrive within the society. Then it came the Horace Kallen's critique. Horace Kallen, an early 20th century philosopher, urged that melting pot metaphor did not adequately reflect the reality of the immigrant experience. That's true, because Kallen believed that immigrants should not have to be abandoned their cultural identities to be accepted in America. Simple. And then she said, instead of assimilation, Karen advocated for a model where immigrants could maintain their cultural identities while simultaneously participating in American society. This led to the introduction of the salad bowl metaphor, in which Each culture retains their unique identity, but all work together within the same societal framework. Unlike the melting pot, the difference is here that the salad bowl metaphor reflects a society where diverse cultures coexist without losing their individuality. Means metaphor reflects a society where diverse culture coexist without losing their individualities. Bhikkhu Parekh's definition. Let's see how he defines it. Bhikkhu Parekh urges that multiculturalism is about recognizing cultural diversity as a fundamental aspect of human life, which shapes individual identities, experiences, and world views. Which means he emphasized that cultural rights, the right to preserve one's culture and identity, should be central to multicultural societies. Should be central to multicultural society. He also urged that these rights must be equally protected for all the groups, regardless of race, religion, or language. This approach, what happened to this approach was that it distanced multiculturalism from mere tolerance, promoting equality and justice for all cultural communities. So that is something which is to be understood, because Parekh definition has distanced multiculturalism from mere tolerance, promoting equality and justice for all cultures, all communities. Key concept of multiculturalism. The first one is cultural diversity. Cultural diversity acknowledges the existence of multiple cultures within a society, each contributing distinct practices, beliefs, languages, and customs. Multiculturalism seeks to create a framework in which such diversity is embraced and celebrated rather than suppressed or erased. For example, in practice, when we really practice this cultural diversity in practice, this means supporting policies and social structures that allow cultural practices like religious observance, festivals, and languages to flourish. So that is something called cultural diversity. Now, what is cultural rights? Cultural rights are the entitlements of individuals. That's the entitlement of individuals and groups to maintain, express, and develop their cultural identities freely. Means multiculturalism stresses the importance of recognizing and protecting these rights so that individuals and communities can preserve their traditions. They can preserve their traditions without facing discrimination or marginalization, which is very important. Multiculturalism stresses the importance of recognizing and protecting these rights, the rights like cultural rights, so that individuals and communities can preserve their traditions without facing discrimination or marginalization. This might include the right to speak one's native language or observe traditional customs or practice religion openly. Next one is integration and assimilation. Actually, what is integration? Integration, if you ask what is integration, Anushka, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Can you let me know what is integration means? In your own words, don't go to the book and don't go to any Google and all, just what you understand by integration.
Sir, integration basically means where you mixed up two, three cultures or people in a particular society.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. And how about Sanjeev? How are you?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you, Sanjeev. How are you?
Sir, fine, sir.
What do you understand about assimilation? Integration, anyway, Anushka has said. What do you understand about
Sir.
assimilation?
Assimilation, I don't have any perfect idea, sir.
No problem, no problem. Okay. What Anushka said about integration is right. Integration normally refers to the process of bringing different groups like culture, social, or ethnic into a cohesive, harmonious society. Okay. Not only that, while maintaining mutual respect and collaboration. That's very important. It's not about bringing everyone together. It is about bringing everyone together and maintaining mutual respect and collaboration. It, it also involves like adapting to shared norms, values, while allowing individuals or groups to retain aspects of their own identities. Whereas assimilation refers to the process by which individuals or groups from a minority culture adopt the customs, values, and behaviors of dominant culture. That's the main thing. Assimilation means a person from a group which is a minority enters into a culture where he has to adopt or he has to accept or he has to follow the the customs, values, and even the behaviors of that dominant culture. And it often comes with the expense of their own cultural identities. That is, so normally their cultural identities will be kept aside and they will accept a different culture altogether. That's called assimilation. So, in multiculturalism, integration promotes a society where different cultures coexist and interact, contributing to a collective social and cultural life without the need to give up their cultural identities. Whereas assimilation, by contrast, requires minority cultures to conform to the norms of the dominant culture, often resulting in the erosion of the original cultural practices. That is called uh, integration and assimilation. Cultural rights. What is cultural rights? Cultural rights are the entitlement of individuals and groups to maintain, express, and develop their own cultural identities freely. What is hybridization? Hybridization refers to the process. These are the key concepts of multiculturalism. So it refers to the process in which cultural elements from different traditions mix and form new hybrid cultural expressions. This might include the fusion of music styles, food, language, or even fashion. For example, hybridization occurs naturally in diverse societies as people from different cultures or backgrounds interact, leading to the creation of innovative cultural forms that reflects shared experience of mutual experience or and mutual influences. Example like mixing Hindi and English while talking, like English is a kind of hybridization. Okay. Contemporary relevance. Let us see what are the relevance. Globalization and modern multiculturalism. Yes, Sanjeev. Sanjeev, you raised your hand. Sanjeev?
Sir, regarding the earlier slide, integration and assimilation.
Hmm.
So, can we argue that like integration
Your sound is breaking. Can we
through
argue?
the religious culture? Pardon?
Hmm. Your
Sir,
sound is breaking.
okay, my network is low. So, can we argue that
You're out now. You're gone off. Okay, let us continue. When Sanjeev will come, we will see. The relevance of this multiculturalism, like globalization and modern multiculturalism. In modern globalized world, migration and cross-cultural exchange have made multiculturalism increasingly relevant, which means people now move and interact across borders more than ever, bringing new challenges and opportunities for integration and cultural diversities. Right. Also, there are challenges in contemporary America. What are the challenges in contemporary America? While US has become more diverse, issues like race, immigration, and cultural identity continue to dominate public discourse. This means, for example, the election of Kamala Harris, with her mixed racial background, illustrates the complexity of American identity today, right? Then we have debates on multiculturalism. One major debate revolves around the balance between cultural preservance and national unity, which means, like, critics of multiculturalism always argue that too much emphasis on cultural differences can undermine social cohesion and idea of an unified national identity. This is something which happens when debates always happen. Then the next one is immigration and social cohesion. Immigration continues to spark debates about the ability of new arrivals to integrate into society without disrupting social stability, which means, like, opponents of immigrations often expresses concerns about economic strains or cultural dilutions, while supports while the supporters emphasizes the benefits of diversity in enriching the social fabric. So that's the difference here. And then the systematic inequalities. So we have then the need of inclusive policies. One major debate which revolves around the balance between cultural preservations and national unity. So these are the four relevance of multiculturalism. Sanjeev, you are there. You were asking me some question, right? Sanjeev? Okay. We'll go into the conflict of multiculturalism. According to Rajiv Bhargav's identification, Rajiv Bhargav identifies a broader conflict between multiculturalism, particularly when dealing with how different cultural differences are recognized and treated in society. This conflict arises from tension between different approaches to equality and cultural recognition. For example, multiculturalism seeks to celebrate cultural differences, but this can clash with the principle of treating all citizens equally. Number two, the tension between universalism, which advocates for equal rights for all, and particularism, which emphasizes the recognition of distinct cultural identities, often creates challenges. Yes, this conflict is evident in debate over over minority rights versus national cohesion and balance between liberal values and liberal cultural practices. This conflict is evident in debates over minority rights versus national cohesion. And also, Bhargav suggests that over politicalization of cultural differences can lead to social fragmentation and advocates for a balance that respects cultural diversity while maintaining social cohesion. So this is the conflicts. These are the major conflicts that has been identified by Rajiv Bhargav in multiculturalism. What are the three moments of conflicts? Number one is particularized hierarchy. In this model, there is a dominant community that holds more power and other communities are subordinated. That was first thing. Second thing, the cultural differences between the groups are not just acknowledged, but are reinforced by a hierarchical relationship where the dominant group's culture is superior and minority cultures are expected to submit to their status. For example, a society where the dominant culture group imposes values, customs, or practices on minority group potentially diminishes the significance of the minority culture, right? So that is called particularized hierarchy. What is universalistic equality? This approach seeks equality by ignoring cultural differences altogether. The focus is on ensuring that all individuals are equal. Here, they ensure that all individuals are equal regardless of their cultural background. The idea is that cultural differences should not matter. What matters is the individual's membership in the society. This perspective often overlooks the importance of cultural identity. Let us see something in practice, like people who are treated equally because of their individual status, not because of their cultural heritage. This kind of a treatment can lead to assimilation where cultural identities are downplayed or disregarded for the for the sake of for the sake of uniformity, which means in the dominating culture will put a, a standing or will impose their culture on the minorities, as said before, and that becomes the dominating culture in that community or in that society. The other one is the next one is the particularized equality. This model actually recognizes both cultural differences but seeks equality by ensuring equal membership with cultural communities. So here the difference, but seeking equality by ensuring equal membership within cultural communities. It supports the idea that people belong to cultural groups, and this belonging is important for their identity and sense of equality. Here, both cultural difference and social equalities are recognized. That's the main thing. Here, both the cultural differences and social equalities are recognized. Here, the goal is not to erase differences, but to ensure that all the groups are treated fairly with respect. Now we will go to the next one. It's called egalitarian multiculturalism. Egalitarian multiculturalism. Anushka, do you know what is egalitarian means? Anushka? Are you around, Anushka? Hello? Sanjeev? Sanjeev? Fine. We'll continue. Egalitarianism means it's a philosophy or a belief system that emphasizes equality among all people, particularly in terms of political, economic, and social rights. It normally advocates for reducing disparities in wealth, status, and power, but promoting a society where everyone has equal opportunities and access to resources. So, egalitarian multiculturalism emphasizes that each member of the cultural group should be treated as equal and autonomous individuals within the society. The core idea is that no one should be treated as subordinate because of their cultural background. Also, this form urges against using classes or economic status or as the basis of the recognition, and instead advocates for recognizing and respecting individuals based on their cultural identity and way of life. This form urges against using classes or economic status as the basis of recognition, and instead advocates for recognizing and respecting individuals based on their cultural identity and way of life. Now we'll go to Ashok Chaucer's form of multiculturalism. Dr. Ashok is an Indian academic and author specializing in English literature. He served as the head of the Department of English at Savarabhai Pune University in Pune. He is a reputed person in the society. According to him, democratic multiculturalism, that's the form of multiculturalism he has. This form stresses the importance of recognizing cultural diversity and seeks to provide a political framework for its acceptance. Also, it acknowledges the cultural differences that can lead to conflict between groups, but it focuses on resolving these differences through dialogue and discussion rather than oppression or domination. That's a very important thing. For him, what he says is democratic multiculturalism, according to him, emphasizes social equality and freedom. And in the same time, it ensures that all cultural groups have the right to express the values and participate fully in a society. The core principles are tolerance, negotiations, and respect for diversity, advocating for peaceful coexistence despite differences. Despite the differences. So the core principle are tolerance, negotiations, and respect for diversity, advocating for peaceful coexistence despite differences. Conservative multiculturalism. This form of multiculturalism is less accommodative than the other, while a focus on maintaining traditional values and often restricting cultural differences to fit within certain social norms. It does not encourage the same levels of flexibility or integration as other forms. Instead, it often seeks to preserve the status quo of existing cultural power structures. Cultural power structures, which means conservative multiculturalism might support the idea of cultural diversity, but it does not necessarily support the political empowerment or equal recognition of all cultural groups. It often aims to limit the changes that comes within a multicultural society. Liberal multiculturalism. What is liberal multiculturalism means? It focuses on individual rights and autonomy within cultural groups. It emphasizes that each individual should be free to explain and to express their cultural identity, but it tends to prioritize the freedom of the individual over the recognition of group identity. This form supports the idea that all cultural communities are equal in theory, but it may downplay the importance of identity and belonging within their communities. For instance, it might focus on legal equality and personal freedoms, but it may not delve deeply into how cultural groups maintain their sense of belonging or identity within the larger group or within the larger society. So that's called liberal multiculturalism. What is the critical multiculturalism? Advocates for positive social and cultural transformations. It focuses on equal representations in the public domain for race, class, and gender. It addresses the root causes of social unrest and struggles, recognizing the representation of minority cultures in media, politics, and education, as it is vital for achieving equality. Also, you can say that critical multiculturalism challenges existing structures and systems of power that contribute to the marginalization of certain groups and advocates for a more inclusive, equitable society. We'll go to the next slide, emergence of multiculturalism as an accommodative philosophy. So what does it say? Emergence of multiculturalism as an accommodative philosophy. The basic of multiculturalism curtails from the transformation in Western society after Second World War. That means the downfall of the European Empire, its replacement by US domination on the world economy, and the mass migration due to globalization are responsible for the development of multicultural societies since 1960s. Then it comes multiculturalism in 1950s, followed by the idea to live and let live. Means during 1950s, the idea of multiculturalism was basically rooted in coexistence, which means immigrant communities were allowed to retain their cultural and religious practices as long as they did not disrupt the social fabric and challenges the dominant norms of the host society. So that is what was practiced in 1950s. In 1980s, multiculturalism was soft multiculturalism of acceptance and equal rights and equal rights. Okay, and in the 21st century, multiculturalism has become more assertive, focusing on positive elevation of religious and ethnic identities. This phase is often termed hard multiculturalism due to its proactive stance. So during the 20th century, what happened is that by 1980s or so, the multiculturalism has evolved into acceptance and equal rights. Western societies began recognizing the values of diversities and implement policies to ensure that the rights of minority groups are preserved. And then in 21st century, multiculturalism has become more assertive, and more assertive in the sense that they had been more into religious and ethnic identities, elevation of those identities, and often that's the reason why it is called hard multiculturalism. Modern states and multiculturalism. National identity and globalization. Multiculturalism aligns with national identity, tolerance of diversity, and globalization, addressing issues like identity, culture, religious practices, and public conscience. Whereas assimilation and rights, it projects or it supports the assimilation of migrant communities into host societies, granting basic civil rights and freedom to maintain communal identities. So that's the main thing about modern nations and multiculturalism. We'll go now to multiculturalism as an ideology. What is it? The question of identity. Identity indicates the individual's sense of attachment and belonging to a particular group, community, state, or nation. Culture, religion, race, ethnicity, region, language, etc. are the basic components of identity construction. So what is this identity? What is this identity to do with multiculturalism? In multiculturalism societies, you have to understand that individuals have multiple identities. The cultural identity of the community to which they belong and the national identity that they are based on their citizenship are different, completely different. When that is being brought together in one place, that becomes the question of identity. So here in the question of identity, we have to understand that identity indicates individual sense of attachment or a belonging to a particular group, like culture, religion, etc. Okay. National identity in multiculturalism. Imagined communities, that is what Benedict Anderson said. According to Anderson describes nation as imagined communities because the members of even the smallest nation will never meet or know most of the fellow members, despite this that they share a collective identity. Despite that, they share a collective identity, which we can say like this. Historically, the historical roots to this one is that nations are perceived, we can say, as having ancient origins. Even if they are relatively modern constructs, they imagine antiquity plays a critical role in forming a shared national consciousness. If that is happening, the implication will be that the historical perception helps forge a sense of belonging and legitimacy, but it also creates rigid narratives that may elude those who don't fit the dominant story. right? Now, the privilege in national identity. What is the privilege in national identity? Dominance of a single group. National identity often privileges dominant races, religions, or culture as the standard of or essence of the nation. The centralization excludes or marginalizes other groups. And in the creation of the other, when groups articulate the identities in opposition to the privileged narrative, they are often legitimized or viewed as threats. This this kind of things creates hierarchies and divisions within the nations. For example, in some countries, a specific religion like Christianity in some Western countries, Islam in some Middle East countries is closely tied to national identity, marginalizing the non-adherents. So that's what is called privilege in national identity. Basis of national identity. That's what we have discussed. Separation of national and citizenship identity. Inclusivity in citizenship. Citizenship identity should be inclusive and based on legal and civic participation rather than cultural or ethnic markers. This ensures that all members of the state have equal rights regardless of their cultural identity. Distinguishing identities. It is essential to differentiate between national identity, which may involve cultural or historical elements, and citizenship, which is legal status, conferring equal rights and responsibilities. Example, in United States, despite cultural diversity, citizenship is based on the legal status, ensuring that all citizens have the same rights regardless of the ethnic or cultural background. So that's the difference which we should understand in separation of national and citizenship identity. Now, diaspora, how diaspora were and development of new identities. How diaspora and the development of new identities. Now, we have already studied the national identity in multiculturalism. Now we will see how diaspora and the development of new identities. Number one is transformation of identity. What is transformation of identity? Number one is cultural adaptation. Diaspora communities often adapt to the culture of their host country while retaining elements of their original identity. This blending leads to development of a unique hybrid identity that differs from their original culture. Generation changes. Over time, successive generations of diaspora members may identify less with their ancestral homeland and more with their host country, further altering their cultural identity, like Indian Americans who blend Indian tradition into American cultural practices, creating a unique identity distinct from both India and the US. So that's an example. The Indian Americans in US is an example of transformation of identities. Now, factors leading to social cultural heterogenization. Number one is exposure to new cultures. Diaspora are exposed to the cultural practices, values, and norms of their host society, which leads to the diversification of their original cultural practices. Whereas in the intercultural interactions, other cultural groups in the host country foster new social norms, customs, and practices contributing to social, cultural heterogeneization within the diaspora community. And in the economic and social opportunities, access to different economic, educational, and social opportunities in the host country shapes new aspirations and lifestyles, further diversifying the community. For example, the Chinese diaspora in Southeast Asian countries blends traditional Chinese custom into the local cultural influences, leading to varied expressions of Chinese identity across the region, like the Chinese food, Chinese noodles, all those things. What is the impact of diaspora community? The cultural pluralism. The diaspora community becomes more diverse internally with uh, different subgroups, and those subgroups are adopting various degrees of host culture. Shift in the social structures. Traditional social structures may evolve or dissolve, replaced by new forms of community, organizations, and social relationships that reflect the hybrid identities. And then it comes the identity politics. The evolving identity politics of diaspora community can lead to new forms of political and social engagement. For example, both within it can be within the country or outside the country. For example, the Indian diaspora or the Jewish diaspora in America, which is having a considerable amount of cultural tourism, which has been not affected, they influenced the American culture, the American government too. And then the contribution to host society. The diaspora communities contribute to the cultural heterogeneity of the host society, introducing new traditions, languages, cuisines, and art forms. Innovative and creative, the blending of diverse cultural perspectives can lead to innovative in various fields, including business, technologies, and the arts. That's the contribution to the host host countries. With this, we will end up the chapter today. Is there anything that Anushka you need to ask? I know your mic is not working. You can chat. Anything you need?